I ordered a takeaway after my in-laws ate my food and called me a picky eater. My husband's parents came over for Sunday dinner, which happens maybe once a month. I spent 3 hours making this elaborate meal. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, the works. I'm not even that great of a cook, but I really tried because his mom always makes these little comments about how I don't know my way around a kitchen. Here's the thing, though. I have celiac disease. Like, diagnosed by a doctor, not some trendy gluten-free thing. If I eat gluten, I'm basically destroyed for days. Stomach cramps, nausea, the whole nightmare. So when I cook, everything has to be gluten-free. I use special flour, gluten-free breadcrumbs, all that stuff. It costs way more, but whatever. I need to eat. I made everything completely gluten-free, but it tastes pretty normal. My husband doesn't even notice the difference anymore. So his parents show up around 2 p.m., and we're all sitting around chatting. I mentioned that dinner will be ready in about an hour, and his mom goes, "Oh, good. I'm starving. I hope it's actual food this time." I just smiled and didn't say anything because I've learned that engaging with her comments never goes well. His dad was being nice, asking about my work and stuff. Then dinner's ready and we all sit down. I made my plate first, just a habit since I need to make sure I get some food before it potentially gets contaminated with regular stuff. His mom immediately goes, "Wow, someone's eager," and laughs. Then she starts examining the food like she's a health inspector. She takes a tiny bite of the mashed potatoes and makes this face. "These taste weird. What did you put in them?" I explained that I used a different type of flour to thicken them because of my celiac disease. She rolls her eyes and goes, "Oh, right, your special diet." Then she whispers something to my father-in-law, and they both start picking at their food like it might poison them. The whole meal was awkward. They're making comments about how everything tastes off and asking if I'm sure the chicken is cooked properly. His mom keeps saying things like, "In my day, we just ate what was put in front of us, and I don't understand all these food restrictions nowadays." Finally, I just said, "Look, I have a medical condition. I can't eat gluten or I get really sick. I'm not being picky. I literally cannot digest it." His mom laughed and said, "Honey, that's just being a picky eater with extra steps. My generation didn't have all these made-up allergies." I was so done at that point, I excused myself to the kitchen to start cleaning up, even though we weren't finished eating. When I came back 10 minutes later, they had eaten everything, like everything. All the leftover chicken, all the potatoes, even the green beans, which they were complaining about earlier. My husband's plate was empty too. I just stood there staring at the empty dishes. I had barely eaten anything because I was so stressed from their comments. His mom notices me looking and goes, "Well, I guess it wasn't that bad after all. We were just hungry." Then she laughs like it's some big joke. I looked at my husband and he just shrugged. Like literally just shrugged. Didn't say anything to defend me or acknowledge that this was messed up. So I grabbed my phone and ordered Thai food just for me. I got pad Thai, spring rolls, mango sticky rice, the works. Spent like $40. When the delivery guy showed up, his parents were still there having coffee and cake that his mom brought. I answered the door, got my food, and sat down at the kitchen counter to eat it. His mom comes in and goes, "What's all this?" "We just had dinner." I said, "Yeah, well, I didn't get to eat the dinner I spent 3 hours making because you guys finished it all while calling me a picky eater. So now I'm eating food that I can actually enjoy without being insulted." She got all huffy and said I was being dramatic. His dad tried to smooth things over by saying they didn't realize I hadn't eaten much, but his mom kept going. "We didn't eat that much. And besides, if you made enough food, there would have been plenty for everyone." I just stared at her while eating my pad Thai. Then I said, "You're right. Next time I'll make sure to cook enough food to feed people who complain about it the entire time and then eat all of it anyway." His mom's face went bright red and she started saying something about respect and how I was being rude in my own home. My husband finally spoke up and said, "Maybe we should all just calm down." I ordered a takeaway after my in-laws ate my food and called me a picky eater. My husband's parents came over for Sunday dinner, something that happens maybe once a month, but always feels like a test I didn't sign up for. I spent 3 exhausting hours in the kitchen that morning, carefully prepping roasted chicken, creamy mashed potatoes, and a green bean casserole. I'm not a professional chef, but I really tried. Every detail mattered: the seasoning, the timing, even the table setup, and because I knew that no matter what I did, my mother-in-law would find something to criticize, and she didn't disappoint. Before I even set the table, she smirked and said, "I hope it's actual food this time," like I'd served her cardboard at our last dinner. I bit my tongue, smiled politely, and kept stirring the gravy. What she conveniently forgets, or chooses to ignore, is that I have celiac disease. Not a trend, not a diet, a medically diagnosed condition. Gluten wrecks me from the inside out. So yes, I cook differently. I use gluten-free flour, breadcrumbs, everything. It costs more, but it's the only way I can eat safely. When dinner was finally ready, I made my plate first, just to avoid contamination. Wow, someone's eager. My mother-in-law joked with that fake little laugh that always manages to make my skin crawl. Then she inspected her plate like a food critic on a mission to find fault. "These taste weird," she said after one bite of the mashed potatoes. "What did you put in them?" I explained again that I used gluten-free flour. She rolled her eyes. "Oh, right. Your special diet," her husband snickered quietly. And I just felt that familiar lump in my throat, that mixture of humiliation and anger that I've learned to swallow for the sake of keeping peace. By the time dinner ended, I'd barely eaten a few bites. They, on the other hand, had devoured everything. Every last piece of chicken, all the potatoes, the casserole, gone. My husband's plate was clean too. He didn't even look guilty. When I came back from the kitchen, the dishes were practically licked clean. His mom grinned and said, "Guess it wasn't that bad after all." We were just hungry. I stood there speechless. I'd cooked for hours, spent extra money on ingredients I could safely eat, endured their mockery, and in the end, there was nothing left for me. My husband looked up from his coffee, shrugged, and said nothing. That was the moment something in me just clicked. I picked up my phone, ordered Thai food, and waited. When the delivery guy showed up, I walked right past them with my pad Thai, spring rolls, and mango sticky rice. My mother-in-law's eyes widened. "What's all this?" she asked. "We just had dinner." "Yeah," I said calmly. "You all did." "I didn't," she frowned. "You're being dramatic." I smiled, a tired, razor-thin smile. "No, I'm just finally eating something that won't make me sick. Or insulted." Her husband tried to defuse it, saying they didn't realize how much they'd eaten. But she doubled down. "If you'd made enough, there'd be plenty for everyone." I looked her right in the eye, chopsticks in hand. "Next time I'll make sure to cook enough food for people who complain the whole time and still eat it all anyway." Her face turned red. My husband finally muttered, "Maybe we should all calm down," but I was already calm. For the first time in years, I felt strangely peaceful because I realized I wasn't cooking for their approval anymore. I was done playing the polite daughter-in-law. That night, I finished my pad Thai in silence, enjoying every single bite. It wasn't just food. It was freedom. Story for 22 years, I was both dad and mom to my daughter. Her mother left for a new family. At 23, my daughter moved in with them because they had a pool. For her wedding, she asked me not to come because her stepfather would give her away. When I tried to talk to her, she said, "I changed my last name because I was ashamed of yours." What she didn't know was that with that decision, she sealed her greatest mistake. Chapter 1. The day she was left in my arms. The rain was cold the day my wife left. I remember it because our daughter, just a toddler in pigtails, was holding my hand while her mother loaded her designer suitcases into the back of a silver Lexus. No tears, no goodbye, just one final shrug as she turned and said, "I need more than this life." This being me, this being our tiny two-bedroom house. This being her own daughter standing in wet socks holding a half-eaten cookie. I didn't beg her to stay. I didn't yell. I just picked my daughter up, closed the door, and decided in that moment I would be both father and mother. She would never feel abandoned. Not if I could help it. We grew up together, really. I learned how to braid hair using a stuffed animal. Burned pancakes every Sunday until I got it right. I worked double shifts, odd jobs, whatever it took. Her shoes came before mine, her school books before my own meals. When other parents handed off to spouses, I just drank coffee and pushed through. She never asked where her mother went. Maybe she knew. Maybe she didn't care. I thought I was enough. When she made honor roll, she shouted, "Dad, you're the reason." When she got into college, she cried into my shoulder. And on her 18th birthday, she said, "You're my whole world." So when everything changed, it broke me. Chapter 2. Dad, I'm moving in with Mom. They have a pool. She was 23 when it started happening. Subtle changes. At first, the calls got shorter. The I love yous faded. Birthday dinners turned into sorry, I already promised them I'd come by. Them, her mother and her new husband, the same woman who once declared, "I'm not cut out to be a mother," had apparently rediscovered her maternal instincts when her new husband's business boomed. Suddenly, they were the perfect family. Suddenly, there were Instagram photos laughing around their pool, hugging at brunch, twinning in mother-daughter spa robes. I didn't say a word. I kept my heart quiet and my mouth shut until one day she came over with a cardboard box. I thought she was just picking up a few things. I made her coffee. She didn't take it. Instead, she said, "Dad, I'm moving in with Mom." I blinked. "Is everything okay?" She smiled, awkward, almost rehearsed. They have more space, a pool. It's closer to my job, and honestly, it just feels easier. Easier. The word hit like a slap. I nodded. Of course, whatever you need. But inside, something cracked. I had raised her with scraped palms and sleepless nights. Now I was being traded for a chlorinated backyard and wine nights with a woman who once said parenting was a prison. Still, I helped her load the box. I stood in the driveway as she drove off, waving like it didn't shatter me. What I didn't realize then was that this was just the beginning. Chapter 3. I don't want you at my wedding. The day she told me it was a breezy spring afternoon, I still remember the way the wind shifted through the trees outside my window, like even nature paused to listen. She called, not visited. That should have been the first sign. "Hey, Dad," she said casually, like she wasn't about to twist the knife. "So, about the wedding," I smiled, genuinely excited. I'd been saving to help with the dress, the flowers, whatever she needed. "Yeah, what do you need, kiddo?" A pause. Then the words came out like poison coated in sugar. "I was thinking, maybe it's better if you didn't come." Silence. I thought I'd misheard. Didn't come where? To the wedding? I felt the earth tilt beneath me. Why? I asked, my voice steady, though my hands trembled slightly. She hesitated. "It's just it would be weird. You and Mom haven't spoken in years, and her husband is walking me down the aisle." "I don't want any drama." Her words blurred at the edges of my hearing. She continued, "It's nothing personal. I just want it to be about love, peace, not complicated family stuff." Not personal, but I wasn't even welcome at the wedding of the daughter I raised alone. I forced a small breath. "Is that how you really feel?" "Yeah, I think it's for the best. I hope you understand." "I do," I replied. And then she hung up. That night, I sat alone in my study and looked at the bookshelf where her childhood drawings were still framed. The macaroni Father's Day card, the stick figure family that only had me in it. The years of scraped knees, bedtime stories, sacrifice, all erased in favor of a pool, a name, and a man who came in when the hard part was already done. But if she thought this was just another chapter she could write me out of, she had no idea what was coming. Chapter 4, a new last name. A final goodbye. 2 weeks after that call, I got the wedding invitation. It was delivered to my mailbox like any other letter. No return address, no note, just embossed cream paper with floral trimming and a wax seal that tried too hard to look elegant. "Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Blake request the honor of your presence." I paused. Mr. and Mrs. Blake, her mother and her stepfather. There was no mention of me, no daughter of James Foster, no loving father of the bride, just a new last name, a borrowed identity, a shallow rewrite of her past. She had officially taken his name, Blake, and erased mine from her life. It wasn't the absence of an invite that stung the most. It was the rewriting of our history. 22 years of scraped knees, Christmas mornings, emergency room visits, college tuition, all buried beneath a pool and a patio grill. She changed her name because she was ashamed of mine. Ashamed. That word rang louder than all the rest. Not forgotten, not distanced, not even indifferent. Ashamed. I sat there in silence, the invitation trembling in my fingers, and I realized she didn't just leave me out of the wedding. She left me out of her story. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this wedding would mark more than a new beginning for her. It would also mark an end, because some mistakes aren't loud. Some are quiet, simple, like a signature, a name change, a single rejection that echoes for decades. She had just sealed her greatest mistake, and I was about to make sure she understood it. Chapter 5. The gift they didn't expect. The wedding day arrived. I wasn't there, of course. Not at the church, not in the photos, not even in the shadows. But I hadn't disappeared. I'd been quietly preparing something in the background, something final. See, when my daughter chose to legally take her stepfather's name and remove mine, she triggered more than just emotional pain. She triggered a clause I had quietly built into her life years ago, just in case. When she turned 18, I'd opened a legacy trust in her name. College tuition, her first car, travel funds, all of it had been part of a long-term plan. By 25, the trust would mature, and she'd receive the full remainder, more than $420,000 from compound interest, careful investment, and years of sacrifice. But the clause simple: any legal change of last name without the consent of the grantor will nullify this agreement and reassign assets to charitable causes of the grantor's choosing. That clause was signed, notarized, and stored in 2 separate places, including with my estate attorney. She had every right to erase me from her wedding. But by erasing my name from hers, she'd also erased the future I'd built for her, and so on the morning of her wedding, while she stood in her designer dress and prepared to walk down the aisle with a man who'd entered her life only a decade ago, I sent one quiet envelope via courier to her new address. Inside a formal letter effective immediately, the legacy trust of James Foster is dissolved. The remaining funds have been transferred to the Foster Foundation for Single Fathers. A single black and white photo of us, her on my shoulders at age 5, smiling wide in front of the old apartment complex. And finally, a handwritten note. You chose a new name. You chose a new family. And that choice came with weight. No hate. Just closure. Dad, I wasn't bitter, just done. And the silence that followed said more than any scream ever could. Chapter 6, The Fallout. It took her 2 weeks to realize what she'd lost. At first, she was too busy basking in the post-wedding glow, posting smiling photos with her stepfather holding her arm at the altar tagged my real hero. I saw them, I didn't comment, didn't like, didn't even flinch. But the day she visited her trust manager expecting to talk about a honeymoon fund or down payment on a house was the day the glass castle she'd built came crashing down. My daughter called me from the parking lot. Tears in her voice, panic under the surface. Dad, what's this? They said the trust is gone. That you dissolved it. I stayed quiet for a moment, not because I didn't care, but because I needed her to sit with it. Then I said calmly, I didn't dissolve it. You did the moment you erased my name. But that was just a name. No, that name carried your childhood. It carried every scraped knee I bandaged, every school project I helped with, every 3 a.m. fever I stayed up through. That name wasn't just mine. It was ours. She sobbed. You don't understand. Mom and Rick, he's been so supportive. I interrupted gently. Supportive is easy when someone enters the picture after the hard part is over. I carried the weight when no one else would. And I never asked for a thank you, just not to be forgotten. Silence. Then finally, a whisper. Can we fix this? I paused. I don't know, I said truthfully. Some things aren't about money. Some things are about respect and choices and consequences. That was the end of the call. Later that night, I donated $100,000 from the trust to a foundation for abandoned single fathers. Then I framed a photo of my daughter at age 10, beaming in her little graduation gown, and placed it on my shelf as a memory, not a future. Chapter 7, Her Greatest Mistake. Weeks passed. The world didn't collapse for her. Not yet, but things started shifting. Her new in-laws, who once admired her for being classy and cutting off the dead weight, began whispering when they learned she had rejected the very man who raised her. The honeymoon photos were filled with smiles, but I could see it, the shadow behind her eyes, the unease. She had married into comfort but abandoned her roots. Then came the ripple effect. The job interview she was excited for canceled after the board saw my name on her resume reference and reached out. They didn't like the story they heard. The mortgage approval declined because the trust that once backed her as collateral no longer existed in her name. She called again, this time not from the parking lot. This time from a cold place in her heart called regret. Dad, I made a mistake. A big one. I thought, no, I cut in gently but firmly. You didn't think that was the problem. She broke down, begged me to come visit, begged me to walk her through it, just explained to me how I lost you so easily. I told her, you didn't lose me easily. You lost me slowly. Every time I showed up and you ignored me. Every time you said, Rick is my real dad now. Every time you called me cheap for not having what they had. Then I said what I'd carried for 23 years. Love isn't measured by pools or parties. It's measured by sacrifice.